if you think about a wave and there's a piece of wood in the ocean and a wave comes by, the wood doesn't move very much. It just sort of goes up and down with the wave. So a photon can behave as a wave, or it can behave as a particle. And a particle would be like another piece of wood on the same ocean, and it bumps that piece of wood and pushes it forward. So we've either got the billiard ball idea or we've got the wave idea. And his idea was that if we split a photon and we send it in two directions, if quantum mechanics is true, if we measure the photon to be a wave, it can be measured either way, but you can only measure it one way or the other way. If we measure this photon to be a particle, this one will also be a particle. And if we measure this one to be a wave, this one will also be a wave. Now this holds true. Now they're thinking in big terms here. So let's say, for example, a photon starts at the sun and it's coming toward Earth, but there's a planet in between and it has to split into two portions, let's say. And it goes around this planet and we measure it on this side of the planet, and on the other side of the planet it behaves exactly the same way. So if we measure it as a particle on one side, it also will behave as a particle on the other side of the planet. And it happened. It happens 100% of the time. This is an actual reality. And here's just a little diagram that shows you how they did it. They split the photon with a prism, and they have little electronic observers, not physical observers, but they have electronic observers. And it gets even weirder than this. They ended up finding out that these photons almost have a personality. And so one time they split it, and they thought, okay, we'll have little sensors all the way up, but we won't actually observe it 100% until it gets to this end. And so they were able to go back in time with this other sensor to see what happened. The photons split, they went apart, and they're going up here, and up until this point, they were behaving as a wave. And then they changed their mind real quickly at this end, and they said, no, let's measure it as a particle. And this photon went back in time and retraced its steps and became a particle. But up until that point, it had behaved as a wave. They did this in Maryland, and it's strange. So photons are like alive. That's an odd concept, isn't it? That wouldn't go well in the Newtonian physics because he thought everything was a machine. But now we understand that light and photons and even human beings are alive. We have consciousness in us. This was another experiment talking about another concept of Einstein's, was that he observed this aspect of quantum physics that there's this spooky action at a distance. In other words, so if this photon on this side of the planet was measured as a particle, and on the other side of the planet it also became a particle, there must be faster than light transfer of information between those two photons. They've got to be talking. Of course, he thought that was impossible. That's why he went about trying to disprove quantum mechanics. But not too long ago, they actually proved that there is this spooky action at a distance, scientifically proven. Now, of course, we've been doing this for 100 years with radionics, but we're kind of outside the normal science. They don't really recognize radionics as being a science. But here's an article about proving that this action at a distance can happen and does happen. Now, David Bohm was a quantum physicist, and he is famous for coming up with the concept that we live in a holographic universe. And I'm going to explain what a hologram is and what that means in terms of being in a holographic universe. But he also spent a lot of time with Krishnamurti. So he understood, once he got this concept that we're living in this hologram, this holographic universe, that was very much related to what the spiritual concepts were for thousands of years. And so he had a lot of conversations with Krishnamurti, and they blended their ideas together and launched a whole new awareness level of quantum physics and spirituality. And this was kind of the marriage between quantum physics and spirituality was with David Bohm. So let's talk about what a hologram is. So if we take a normal photograph of an apple, for example, It's just a normal photograph, two-dimensional, not a holograph, three-dimensional picture, just a normal photograph. And we were to cut that photograph in 4 pieces, we end up with 4 different parts of the apple, right? That makes sense, doesn't it? We get 1 slice of that if we take out just one of those. Well, a hologram works a little differently. The holographic camera uses prisms and bends the light around, and it creates not a photograph to begin with. We use lasers, and we bounce photons off of different sides of the apple in this case. But what comes out on the holographic film is not a picture of an apple. It looks like a bunch of squiggles, like this. When you shine a laser light back through that film plate, you get this 3-dimensional looking image of an apple. It's very magical looking. So what happens if you were to cut the holographic film into 4 pieces and you were to shine a laser light through just 1/4 of that film? Do we get to see a quarter of the apple like we did when we cut a 2D film piece into 4 pieces? No. When we put the laser light through it, we actually get the entire picture of the apple. It's just not quite as clear. So, this is the exciting part. So if we were to shine a laser light through all 4 pieces of that holographic film that we've cut into 4 pieces now, what do you think we get? We get 4 apples. Okay, now this is where it gets interesting. Let's imagine for a minute that you're God, okay? But you're not a 2-dimensional God. You're a 3-dimensional God, yeah? You're all-powerful, and you're 3 dimensions, and you decided, you know what would be really fun? I could split myself up into a trillion pieces, and then we'll shine a little laser light through each one of those, and guess what? I'll become everything in the universe. And that's what's sitting in this room right now. Light shines through it. So each one of us is like a little piece of that shattered mirror that is having this cosmic light shine through it. And we're manifest here as 3-dimensional beings. But realistically, we're all the same. We're all the one holographic film that's been shattered into 1,000,000 pieces, and we're all exactly the same. We're all God. That's what we are. Let that sink in for a minute. Each one of us, right here, right now, we are God manifest. Now, the exciting part is, guess what you can do with your little piece of shattered mirror? You can connect with other mirrors, and you can combine your consciousness together through meditation, through contemplation, through focusing your mind and your energy back to the source, and guess what happens? Your mirror gets bigger, and you can reflect more of the cosmic energy through your holographic film, and you become more of God. Now, I don't think we're ever going to become the complete all that is, but I'm sure going to try. You want to join me? Let's all become as much of God as we can. So, the next theory that came after quantum theory is called string theory. And this happened in must have been about 1986, I think, when some quantum physicists got together and started discussing the nature of things, and they looked down further than subatomic particles, and they said, you know what? I think realistically what's happening is the fundamental particle, because you know they've been looking for this fundamental particle forever. They just built this huge thing in Switzerland to smash atoms together and look for the smallest particle possible. And no matter how far they go, they find smaller and smaller particles. But with string theory, they said, no. There are no particles. You know what they really are? They're little strings, but they're calling them strings, but they're actually vibrations. And these two vibrations, when two of these vibrations intersect, it creates a particle, an energetic particle. And that's the basis of string theory. And that's the newest, latest physics that is being looked at as a serious contender for a unified field theory. Doesn't that sound a lot like what Krishnamurti was talking about? I mean, some of you are familiar with, we'll just say all the saints. All of the gurus and the saints have said that the world is made up of vibrations, and vibrations are primary, and the matter is secondary. So now we're really starting to bridge the gap between physics and spirituality to make an understanding. So if you really want to understand physics, meditate more. Listen to what Sri Patri says. Meditate. You will understand quantum physics. That's what I did. I'm not a quantum physicist. I don't know anything about any of this. I just said and meditate, and it all comes in and makes sense. So that's where I got my theories. Okay, the next step is what's beyond string theory? And that is my theory, which is informational fields are pre-vibration. In other words, information, pure conscious awareness, pure informational fields are primary before even vibrational strings come together and create subatomic particles. And I described that in my book. It's called Regaining Wholeness Through the Subtle Dimensions. And I was awarded an honorary PhD for my work with this concept and these theories. Thank you. So we call these informational fields intrinsic data fields. They're intrinsic because they're primary. They're the original data fields. These are the blueprints for reality. And in my workshop on Monday, I will show you exactly, step by step, how that works and what we can do with them. I don't have time to go into all of it today, but on Monday, and my workshop will be in the morning in Hall 1. We start at 10 o'clock, and I hope a lot of you will come for that. But in the meantime, if you don't make it for that, you can get my book free online. You just go to my website, se-5.com. Make sure you put the dash in there. And you'll see here on the left-hand side, you'll see you can put in your name and your email address, and you'll receive not only my book, but you'll receive a series of newsletters that I have written that explain what scalar theory is, a little bit about informational theories, and what you can do with that knowledge yourself. The picture of me down at the bottom was the last time I was here speaking at the Global Spiritual Sciences Congress. And so I also have that video on my website. If you haven't seen that lecture, it's a little bit longer and you'll get a lot different information actually. It's a totally different talk. So what all of this brings together, and the next step for humanity really as a whole, is to move from this concept that we use computers, we use an automobile, we use things external to ourselves that are machines. And the next step is to find out that we can use this process of consciousness and interact with technology. Now we have to design technology to do that, which is happening as we speak. There is older experimental research that has been done in this area in the terms of called radionics, which we didn't know that it was consciousness interactive technology when it first started 100 years ago, but it has evolved over time to where it is today. And this consciousness interactive technology relies on our ability to access, that's not quite the way I want to say it. Since it's interactive, the technology will not work like a machine. In other words, it's not a push button. You don't go and, like a washing machine, you throw your clothes in, you set the timer, put the soap in, and you walk away. Even though it behaves like that, it's accessing another dimension which is relying on your consciousness. And I'm not talking about your conscious mind. It's your consciousness itself. you're interacting at another dimensional level with this technology. And that's what produces the magic. I don't know if you noticed the subtitle of my book, but it's called Where Science Meets Magic. And that's what we're working with. We're working with technology that appears many times to be magical. And many times it doesn't. It has to do with probabilities and possibilities. Again, going back to quantum physics, I know everybody says anything is possible. I don't really believe that. I think that anything that is possible does exist, but it's not probable. For example, a spaceship could just appear and manifest itself on top of the King's Chamber meditation spot in the next 5 minutes. It is possible. It's one of the millions, zillion possibilities in the universe, but it's not probable. Yeah? Nothing's impossible, but it's not necessarily probable. So what we do with this technology, from my observation over the last 30 years, is that we can move possibilities toward the probability stage, and this is the fun part and looks like magic. We can move a probability into actuality. That's when it appears like magic, because it's probable, it's probably going to happen, but we just give it that extra nudge, and then it brings it into manifestation. Everybody goes, wow, how did that happen? I want you to do that with the spaceship now. It's like, well, that's a possibility. That's way over there, you know? So you have to kind of discern where your boundary conditions are. In quantum physics, we have what are called boundary conditions. If something's outside of the boundary conditions, you might be able to move them inside the boundary conditions, but if they're inside the boundary conditions, you can usually move them into actuality. Yeah? It's important to remember, especially when these things look so miraculous, because they really do. Sometimes it just looks like this is outrageous. So this is the Sec-5 1000, and how magical is this? Okay, let me give you an idea. We take a photograph of a piece of land, okay? It's just a photo. We put the photo inside of the instrument, and we can read. Now, let's say I took a photo of some land in India, and I'm sitting in America or in Bali. I can, in real time, read out all the nutritional values of the soil. I can find out if the plants are healthy or if they're not well. There's a lot of things I can do from a photograph. I can put a photograph inside there and read out everything in real time. Now, what happens if I put in a photo of a person? I can do the same thing. Real-time information. How accurate is it? Galen Hieronymus, who